When I was younger, I thought that camping happened when we stayed at the Marriott Hotel. And I heard of places like Glacier National Park and Yellowstone National Park, and I thought in my child brain that they were next to the Magic Kingdom and that we just weren't cool enough to go there when we went to Disney World. So last year, when I was moving from Portland, Oregon to Washington, D.C., I pitched this idea to my boyfriend, Keith, that we go on this epic adventure and we stop at Glacier and Yellowstone. And he was like, yes. So Keith and I know just enough about camping to get ourselves in trouble. So we immediately start researching and we learn that Glacier and Yellowstone are bear country. And we discover 3 really important things that you want to know if you are ever going to be cohabitating, perhaps, with a bear. Number 1, don't feed the bears. So at your campsite, you have these big, gigantic metal canisters that lock. And if you have food, you want to make sure they stay in this area. And if you have food on your person when you're hiking, they go in a little sack. It's a bear sack. Number 2, do not surprise a bear that's not expecting you. So when you're hiking, you want to make a lot of noise. And the way that I handled this was through many renditions of hi-ho, it's off to work we go, which inevitably led to our first fight. Jess, I'm not singing Disney songs. I don't care what you sing, as long as you make some noise. And Keith was really wonderful about this, so he came back with a jingle bell that he tied around his waist that jingled when he walked. And he came back with the 3rd really important thing you want to know if you're ever in bear country. He came back with bear spray. And if you're a city-dwelling female, you might have at some point carried a little tiny canister of pepper spray around to make yourself feel better. Well, bear spray is going to add 12 seconds to your life should you encounter a bear. I felt marginally better with these things until the next day we're driving towards a hike and I happen to point out like, oh, hon, look, 2 bears. And Keith slams on the brakes, turns the car around, puts it in park, and gets out of the car and walks towards the bears. Thank goodness the bears wanted less to do with us than we did with them, so they hightailed it out of there. But I was a little concerned that should we encounter more wildlife, we might go in the wrong direction. So we pack up in Glacier without any other bear sightings, and we get to Yellowstone, and we're setting up camp, and Keith is, again, being wonderful and making this delicious lunch, curry, and it's just like, you can smell it, it's really fragrant, and so my mouth is watering. And he's rummaging around in the car, and he's like, Jess, I know you're tired, but I'd really, really like to go for a hike if you think, and he stops talking. And for a second, I think, do I turn and look at where he's pointing, or do I just run in the opposite direction? But I take a breath and I turn, and there is this gigantic, lumbering bison walking into our campsite. I don't know anything about bison. I only know about bears. And so we have this bison invading, and my thought is, oh my God, no food. Number 1, no food. So I start slamming all the covers on top of the pots and the pans, and I'm like, Keith, we need to clean up the campsite, no food. And I pick them up, and I put them in the car and slam the door and turn around, and Keith is creeping toward the bison. Awesome. And the bison takes a big chomp of grass and then sits down 10 feet from my tent. We don't know what to do, and so we watch for a while, and Keith takes the first shift, and I take a nap. And when I wake up from my nap, there's this gentle strumming on a guitar. And so I unzip the tent, and I climb out, and Keith has his cowboy hat on, and he is strumming on the guitar, and he turns to me, and he's like, Jess, how cool is it that I get to play next to a bison? And then he takes another sip of whiskey. And then he says to me, his name is Bruce. we have Bruce the bison in our campsite. And he really hasn't done anything, so I feel comfortable. Like, I can leave the campsite, we can go for a hike, and when we get back, it's dusk. And Bruce isn't there, and I'm kind of bummed, because I feel like, man, he was looking out for us, and he's gone. So we go to sleep, and we wake up in the middle of the night to this, and I am instantly alert. And Keith had his arm across me, and his arm is hard. He is so tense, and I can't hear him breathing. And I realize, I'm not really breathing right now. And he slides his hand down into mine, and he says to me, "Where's the bear spray?" And I squeeze his hand and close my eyes, and I say, "Nothing." And he says, "I think the bear spray's in the car." And I squeeze tighter, because I don't want the bear to know we're in here. And he says, "What do you want me to do?" And I squeeze his hand really tight, and I say to him, "I want you to stop talking." And he pauses for a second, because he's such a good partner. He wants me to know that he heard me. And then he says, "I'm going to get the bear spray." And before I can really think about it, he is out of the tent, and he flashes the flashlight left and right and darts for the car. And I hear him rummaging around, and I hear the car door slam, and then he shows back up in the tent, and he's shining the flashlight on the ground, and he walks over to the corner of the tent, and he picks up the bear spray. And he says to me, "Don't worry, it's just Bruce." And we laughed about it, and we got back into the sleeping bags and settled down. And for the first time that trip, I really felt the tension just leave my body. Bruce was on watch, and so was Keith.